Welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the trailer for the final season of The Boys. First, a little catch-up, since it's been a while since Season 4. In that season, Butcher discovers that there is a virus that is designed to kill Soups, and he works to get his hands on it so he can kill Homelander. Also, his multiple injections of Temp V have created a cancer monster in his head, who takes the form of Jeffrey Dean Morgan. And that monster has tentacles and superpowers, basically turning Butcher into a Soup with the powers of Venom, who is also dying of a brain tumor. Sister Sage also joined the Seven. Now, she is the smartest person in the world, and she orchestrated events to make Homelander rise to power and to be head of the country. At the end of the season, she has manipulated events so that the new vice president, Victoria Newman, is killed, and the president has to resign because he was complicit in the murder. This makes the Speaker of the House president, and he promptly declares martial law and hands power over to Homelander. Most of the boys are arrested except for Annie, who joins forces with A-Train, and Butcher, who goes off on his own. Now, over on the show Gen V, Homelander's new curriculum takes over the school, and we find out that Sage is working with the school's founder, Thomas Godolkin. He's a fascist who mind controls others and is killed at the end of the season. The students end the season joining Starlight's resistance along with A-Train. So let's dive into this trailer. It begins with Homelander ascending stairs, a metaphor for how he is ascending to his throne of essentially ruling the world. He says, "My power is absolute." And as he looks out at this crowd, all we see is one heavenly light shining on him to show us his real goal this season, to become immortal. Last season was about him becoming president, and now he wants to become God. And we see that in the next shot. He spreads his arms out like a crucifix, much like at the Belief Expo back in Season 1. But now the aisle itself looks like an inverted cross. Now, an inverted cross is usually a symbol for martyrdom called St. Peter's Cross, but it's also a symbol of the Antichrist. In the book of Revelation, the Antichrist leads all the nations of the world and tries to establish himself as the new divine figure for humanity to worship. Basically, Homelander's story this season. Homelander says that he has a bigger destiny right when he overshadows this cross, making his intention clear. He wants to become immortal and replace God. And we saw hints of this last season. He was obsessing over his age, even keeping his gray hairs in a jar. The song playing is Bad Company by Bad Company. It is a kick-ass classic rock ballad about a bad hombre who is dead set on living his life on the wrong path. He knows that being a violent renegade is going to be a death sentence, but hey, he is who he is. And this song does not refer to Homelander, it is about the boys. In the comic book, Butcher and his team have one goal: to end all Soups. And they do this by injecting themselves with Compound V so they also have powers. Now in the comic, for Butcher, this means that he was always going to end his story by killing his friends and himself. Now there are hints that he may have a similar goal this season that we'll talk about later on. It turns out that Homelander was narrating to Firecracker. Last season, remember, she started off as a fringe newscaster.
I sell purpose.
But then she was promoted to the anchor of Vought News, cementing Homelander's takeover of the media. And then we see that Butcher is back with the boys. Now this season might open with A-Train and Starlight breaking the team out of one of Vought's freedom camps. Or maybe Butcher's the one who brings them all together. Their new HQ is in an abandoned lab. Now in Gen V, the kids held up in a library that was closed by Homelander's budget cuts. Maybe this lab used to have government funding, but then it was also shut down. Notice the newspapers on the window when they enter. And this is where Butcher is keeping Samir. He was the scientist that refined the virus for Victoria Newman. Last season, Butcher sawed off his leg and kept him prisoner. So Samir evolved the virus to kill all Soups and not just people they injected into. Then Mother's Milk mentions V1. This is the original Formula V drug that made Stormfront, Thomas Godolkin, and Soldier Boy so strong. Homelander mentions destiny, ascension, and absolute power, because with V1, he could basically become immortal. We also know that this season is going to introduce Mason Dye as the character Bombsight. He was a pilot in World War II before he was given V. Now he's going to be a main character in the show Vought Rising. That's the Boys prequel spin-off show. Considering he gets V at the same time as Stormfront and Soldier Boy, he might actually have V1 in his body. Maybe Homelander is going to try to extract V1 from him or from Soldier Boy so he can achieve his godhood. And then we see the Deep riding a hammerhead shark. Now in Season 1, he was rightly canceled pretty hard for sexually assaulting Starlight. Then he had to work really hard to rehabilitate his image, but now, in Homelander's America, none of that matters. He can embrace the manosphere podcast culture as seen in this room with many ridiculous and misogynistic posters, which we will talk about later on. And in the lab, we see Terror, who's a good boy.
I don't see what's so great about him.
Now in the comics, Terror is Butcher's erstwhile companion, but he's only made a couple appearances in this show, when we see Butcher give him his favorite command from the comics to defile a Homelander doll.
Terror? It.
Now, while Samir is talking, we see an ad in the background for A-Train's Turbo Rush soda. This is the same soda that he filmed a commercial for, which was a parody of that Kim Kardashian Pepsi commercial.
Yeah, I think it was Chloe.
Literally doesn't matter, no one cares. We see a needle injecting someone with Compound V as Sister Sage watches, and she's one to watch this season. It's really weird that a black woman would embrace Homelander's brand of white nationalism, and she claimed at the end of the season that she did this just to prove that she could. But we saw on the show Gen V that she and Thomas Godolkin had another plan that she kept secret from Homelander. So what's she up to? Maybe she saw that it was inevitable that Homelander would take control or kill everyone. So maybe she's trying to guide him down a path that can eventually lead to his defeat. Maybe she wants the V1 for herself, so after Homelander's defeated, she can become a kind of immortal guide to humanity over the next millennia or so. Now, The Boys comic also ends with Homelander taking control of the country, kind of. In the comics, there's a Homelander clone, but I'm not going to spoil the twist for you. But I do think that Sister Sage is building up to something similar to this, where she gets the V1 and then Homelander gets killed. Then this would put her in a position to live forever and guide humanity for the next several millennia. And then we see A-Train running around a camp, probably rescuing the boys from the Vought Freedom Camp that we talked about earlier. Now we see the ad for his Turbo Rush soda in the background, and this is showing us how far A-Train has come. He's now saving lives instead of marketing a silly drink. Notice he's also not in costume, but he still uses his blue goggles, probably to keep things out of his eyes as he runs. And notice how everybody around him looks like they're on pause, because this is how he perceives the world. This shows you that when he killed Robin in season 1, he had to have been high off his ass, because he normally could have avoided her if he wasn't in such an altered state. Starlight says,
"We need to run while we can, however we can."
Which is a strange stance for her to take when she's now involved with the Resistance. She recruited the Gen V cast at the end of season 2, so if she wants to run now, where are they going to run to? Maybe she's scared of everyone being captured again, since she was the only one who escaped at the end of season 4. And she is still leading the Gen V kids, Marie and Jordan, who will probably have minor roles this season. I mean, after all, in Gen V, Marie's major story arc was resolved when she reconciled with her sister. But that show also revealed that she is an Odessa-level soup, basically that she's as powerful as Homelander. Because of her ability to control blood, she is one of the few people in this universe who could kill Homelander. Maybe she could even extract the soup virus or Compound V from somebody's blood. Marie is an extremely valuable asset for the boys because, like we saw in Gen V Season 2, not only has she fully unlocked her full potential, but she can also revive people and bring them back from the dead with her powers. Which reminds me, guys, don't forget that we have lots of Kick-Ass Boys parody merch. We have the Diabolical Super Baby, Butcher as the first appearance of Punisher, Soldier Boy as the cover of Captain America #1, and many, many more. Links for these are below. Now, the next bit of the trailer has audio that is just cut to pieces, making it look like Butcher is advocating using the soup virus to kill all soups. Now, I do think he wants to do this. I think his goal is just like in the comic book, but I don't think he says this while he's giving a speech in this room, because Annie is sitting right there in the front row. So I think that for most of the season, this is going to be his secret plan that isn't revealed until near the end of the series. See, Butcher wants to kill all soups because he believes that this is the only way out for humanity. The only way they can possibly move forward is for nobody to have any type of superpowers. Very Zemo of him.
Desire to become a superhuman cannot be separated from supremacist ideals. She will escalate until you kill her.
But I do also wonder if Becca is going to appear in his head again, like she was the angel on his shoulder that we saw last season. I actually really hope not. I think Butcher should be irredeemable this season because that's more true to his character in the show and in the original comics. Now, he says that he wants to use the virus before it's too late, probably meaning that the virus cannot affect people who use V1, and this will be their last chance to kill Homelander. Once he takes V1, he is essentially invulnerable to all harm. And then we get a better look at the Deep's podcast co-host, Black Noir, in Seven Tower as a golden statue of Homelander looms behind him. So I think we're going to see this all season long. Just like in the last season of Gen V, the image of Homelander is going to be omnipresent, looming over people in true fascist fashion. We also see that Butcher is now fully in control of his tentacles, whereas last season, when he used them, he was always in a fugue state. In the spin-off show, The Boys Presents Diabolical, episode 7 featured a V'd-up cancer monster springing from its host and then consuming an entire forest. If Butcher and his tumor are at odds with one another, then the boys might be making a bigger monster than Homelander by enabling Butcher's violent tendencies. And here, Butcher is attacking Cindy. She is the escape soup from season 2, and last season she appeared on Homelander's side. They seem to be fighting in another lab where maybe they're growing more super child soldiers. You can tell from the institution-looking beds covered in the Deep merch, and also the floor being an American flag design, which of course represents Homelander. And then Homelander releases his father, Soldier Soldier Boy. In Season 3, we learned that the original Soup and Captain America parody Soldier Boy was genetically Homelander's father. However, he was in a Russian prison for 40 years while they experimented on him. Soldier Boy now has the ability to take away people's powers by burning the Compound V out of their system. In this way, he's kind of a joint parody of Captain America and the Winter Soldier, an all-American hero who was held captive by the Russians for decades. Now, Season 3 ended with Soldier Boy in Grace's captivity, but now that Grace is dead and Homelander is in control of the government, it looks like Homelander wants to reconnect with his dad. So I love that when he wakes him up, he puts him in this ridiculous sorry snowflake shirt. Remember guys, Soldier Boy hated Homelander at the end of the season, so it'll be interesting to see what Homelander has to offer him to join his side. I think that Homelander needs him for his power-stealing abilities, but also to extract that precious V1 from his body. After all, they do share genetics, so it would make sense if Soldier Boy's DNA was the key to making the V1 work with Homelander's genetic structure. And then we see a prison van with the Vought Freedom Camp logo on the side, complete with fun, cartoony versions of the Seven. Now this is probably a reference to children that were detained in detention centers back in the late 2010s. Not that I would ever think this show would be doing anything to get political.
Absolutely not. It's just a fun superhero show about the dangers of absolute power.
There are a few action shots. Kimiko and Huey's car is stopped by Soldier Boy's shield as he then faces off against Butcher. Then we get a hint about what Homelander actually wants from him as they enter the Fort Harmony Medical Department. This might be the original Vought facility where Soldier Boy got his powers. And then we get this awesome shot of Starlight using her powers to disable power at this power plant. Now, we actually saw more of this scene in the initial Season 5 teaser trailer. This shot, plus the A-Train running scene we saw earlier, are probably from the same sequence. I assume that Starlight and A-Train are freeing the rest of the boys here. It's also been really cool to see how Starlight's powers have evolved over the years. Last season, she finally mastered the power of flight. Homelander keeps talking about his ascension, but Annie's the one who looks like a goddess of thunder in this trailer. Now, I mentioned earlier that Homelander is seizing control of the media by putting in Firecracker as the host of Vought News. In our last election, the so-called Manosphere podcast were a big influence, and the Deeps podcast is a clear parody of those shows. The posters read slogans like Men's Lives Matter, which is appropriating the Black Lives Matter movement, and there's also this man saying he can do it as, frankly, a gross misunderstanding of the purpose of the Rosie the Riveter poster. The Deep even uses the same coded language as some of these influencers, saying, "Beta ship, bro." And look at Black Mar's soundboard. You can see common internet phrases like sus, a bunch of different curses, dub, T, bet, cap, if you know, you know, and an assortment of different ways to say bro. All of this is super ironic because we now know that this Black Noir can talk. Remember, the original Black Noir who cannot talk was killed at the end of Season 3. In Season 4 and Gen V Season 2, we met this new Black Noir who's just an actor. He was always confused and frustrated that he wasn't allowed to speak, so this soundboard is probably really annoying to him. And then we see Stan Edgar is back this season. He made a brief appearance in Season 4 when Victoria Newman let him go after ousting him from Vought, and then he appeared in 2 episodes of Gen V to give the students safe haven. I wonder if his granddaughter's also going to appear in this season. Ashley is wearing a wig to cover her own powers. Remember, she took V last season and it gave her a mutation, but we still don't know what her powers are. And look guys, baby Ryan is all grown up, and this is yet another character that can kill Homelander. Now last we saw, he was on his dad's side. In fact, he was learning to enjoy being cruel.
I want you to slap him.
Now all of this is narrated by Homelander. Stan Edgar and the boys are the people seeking to destroy him. Ashley is the non-believer, which is true. She almost ran away with A-Train last season. But on Backstabbers, we see Ryan, so maybe Ryan is switching sides this season. After all, he decided not to go with either of his dads at the end of Season 4 when he accidentally killed Aunt Grace. And then we see a hall where they're opening a Planet Homelander restaurant and Homelander is punching someone. So who is he punching here? This shot was also included in the teaser trailer, and fans have been speculating if he's punching down on Ryan. Homelander looks conflicted here, like he'd probably be enjoying himself way more if he was hitting Butcher in the face. Soldier Boy is talking to 2 attendants played by Jared Padalecki and Misha Collins. We don't know who these 2 are playing, but this is a meta reference to Supernatural. The trio are reuniting on the set of The Boys. From the background, it looks like they're at Vought Tower, maybe in Soldier Boy's room. It'd actually be funny if Soldier Boy's attendants were his old castmates. And this is David Diggs as the O-Father, a very religious but hypocritical hero who sides with Homelander. He will probably take the place of Ezekiel, the stretchy capes for Christ hero who was killed by Butcher in Season 4. We also see him later on doing some S&M stuff with Ashley, like she used to enjoy doing with Cameron Coleman, the former host host of Vought News. And then we see Soldier Boy's blast, which, like I said, can fry the Compound V out of somebody's system. This is what happened to Kimiko and Queen Maeve in Season 3. His powers could come in handy for taking down a V'd-up cancer beast, and maybe that's how the boys can save Butcher's life. And we end with Homelander in the Oval Office with a shit-eating grin and revealing that Kimiko can now talk.
You guys are friends?
You talk.
Last season, she said her first words when she and Frenchie were separated, and apparently that trauma helped her to overcome her involuntary silence. Well guys, that's all the Easter eggs we found, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below or add us on Twitter, Blue Sky Threads, or in our free-to-join Discord server. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.